When most people think of fairy tales, they imagine children's stories about beautiful princesses, fairy godmothers, and courageous princes slaying dragons. But very few realize how many fairy tales were originally meant for adults, and as a result, catered to adult sensibilities. In those days, people did not hold back from using the darkest elements of life to tell their stories. Infanticide, patricide, matricide, fratricide, name any side you can think of and it plays a major role in at least one fairy tale. In my opinion, Disney is primarily responsible for this sanitization of folklore that's taken place over the past century. Don't get me wrong, they make some incredible movies that manipulate your emotions just like the original stories do, but as dark as these movies can get, they always leave out details that would push them out of the bounds of family friendly. With that in mind, I want to spend today shining some light on the disturbing details they deliberately left out of their most celebrated movies, as well as some truly depressing real life events that inspired the creation of the original stories. But first, I've got to let you guys know that if you're tired of Disney softening these stories for modern audiences, making them all pristine and perfect so they don't stain those iconic white gloves, then I've got some good news for you. We've done the exact opposite with our latest drop over at meremortals.store, giving their beloved Mickey Mouse a makeover to match the messed up stories he's been cleaning up all these years. And the best part is, because Steamboat Willie is in the public domain as of this year, no one, not even the ghost of Walt Disney, can stop us from selling these. So if you want to pick one up for your next trip to Disney World, or to traumatize any Disney adults, just go to meremortals.store or hit the link in the description. The most traumatizing scene from a Disney movie has to be when Pinocchio and Lampwick start transforming into donkeys and Lampwick starts crying for his mother. Pinocchio does manage to save himself before the transformation is complete, but he's not so lucky in the original book, and the way he's changed back is demented. At first, Pinocchio is sold to a circus and forced to perform in dangerous stunts, but when he injures himself, the circus sells him to a farmer who wants to kill Donkey Pinocchio and use his skin to make a drumhead. The way he executes him is brutal too. He ties a rock around Pinocchio's neck, a rope around his hind legs, then he throws him in the lake. But while he's underwater, something incredible happens. It turns out that while Pinocchio was in the water, the blue fairy sent 1,000 fish to eat his donkey flesh away, freeing his puppet body from its prison. When the farmer fishes him up, he is furious to see his donkey was actually a puppet and wants revenge. So he tells Pinocchio he's going to take him to the market and sell him for firewood. But Pinocchio doesn't waste time arguing with him. Instead, he yeets himself back into the water and swims away. If you thought Claude Frollo was creepy in the Hunchback of Notre Dame movie, then you're going to be deeply disturbed by the character that inspired him. Just like in the movie, the book version of Claude Frollo has an unhealthy obsession with Esmeralda, to the point where he actually tries to watch her and Captain Phoebus get it on while he hides in a shadowy corner, presumably getting it on with himself. But his jealousy can't be contained for long. As a power move, Phoebus makes Esmeralda swear her undying love to him. And when Frollo overhears this, he is overcome by a fit of rage. All Esmeralda sees in that moment is an evil, disfigured face suddenly appear behind Phoebus, and she immediately faints. Meanwhile, Frollo takes out his knife and stabs Phoebus multiple times in the back, almost killing him. The worst part is that Frollo immediately flees to the sanctuary of Notre Dame, leaving the city guards to find Esmeralda next to the captain's bloody, unconscious body. And as punishment, they sentence her to death for her crimes. The story only gets darker from there though. Check out my episode breaking down the entire thing over on YouTube. Link in bio. True Love's Kiss is a lie, and there's no better story to prove it than Snow White. Anyone who's seen Disney's Snow White no doubt remembers the romantic, dreamlike ending where the prince saves Snow White from certain death by kissing her presumably dead body on the lips. but the original ending is nowhere near as wholesome. In the Grimm Brothers collection from 1812, the prince discovers the dwarves guarding Snow White's coffin, falls in love with her lifeless body right then and there, and the dwarves give her to him under the condition that he show her the same respect they do. He then orders his servants to carry her to the castle, and they do, but after weeks of hauling the carcass from one room to the next, one of the servants gets fed up, opens the coffin, and smacks Snow White in the back. Lo and behold, this brutal attack dislodged the poison apple that was stuck in her throat, and Snow White is saved from her coma. So basically the exact opposite of True Love's kiss. It was a smack of pure hatred. I think even the Grimm brothers realized this was a weird way for Snow White to be saved though, because only 7 years later, they released a new variant where a servant carrying the coffin simply trips, and the sudden jolt is what dislodges the apple and saves her. The Brothers Grimm wrote an absolutely brutal version of the Cinderella fairy tale, and the only movie I found that captures it accurately is Into the Woods. Based on a Broadway musical of the same name, Into the Woods features every bloody moment of the Grimm version. They include the bit about Cinderella being forced to sort lentils and ashes, her watering a tree with her own tears and it growing to contain the spirit of her mother, and that tree providing her with what she needs to go to the festival all 3 days. But the violent stuff happens at the end, when the prince stops by to see if any woman in the household can fit into her golden slipper. The first sister has her toe chopped off to make it fit, and the other sister slices off a chunk of her heel. Unfortunately for both of them, the prince noticed the blood and let Cinderella try the shoe. When she proves to be his true bride, he carries her off to be married, leaving her bird friends to attack her sisters and tear out their eyeballs. Pretty cool that Disney decided to do this in live action. Now I want to see it in their glorious 2D animation. You're not going to believe this, but in the original Aladdin story, the genie hated Aladdin. Let me explain. You'll remember that in the Disney movie, Aladdin is limited to 3 wishes, and he uses his third one to free Genie from eternal servitude, spawning a lifelong friendship that spanned 3 whole movies. But in the 1001 Arabian Nights collection, Aladdin doesn't have a wish limit, and he puts that to good use by wishing himself a big house, nearly infinite money, and a smoking hot wife. And that is where the problems come in. Toward the end of the story, Aladdin is tricked by an enemy into asking the genie for a roc's egg to hang from the ceiling of his palace. And the genie responds by shrieking, shaming Aladdin for not being grateful for the incredible life he simply had to wish into existence, and says, "How dare you wish for me to hang my master from the ceiling?" For those who don't know, a roc is a massive legendary predatory bird in Middle East mythology, and apparently can be even more powerful than a genie or jinn in some cases. In fact, he gets so offended by the request that he refuses to grant any more wishes for Aladdin and disappears, leaving him to deal with his new mysterious enemy on his own. Remember that scene in Brave where the soldiers are beating the crap out of each other, including the kings, and Queen Eleanor has to rein them in like they're children? Well, the way Eleanor handled that situation reminds me a lot of Agnes Randolph, the Countess of Dunbar. There's a famous legend about her defending Dunbar Castle from a siege by the English during the 1330s, when her husband and the majority of their armed guard were away. Agnes didn't pick up a sword herself, but amidst the panic and bedlam, she rose above and took control, just like Eleanor did here. Then she played mind games with her enemy. When the English used catapults to launch boulders at the castle, she messed with their heads by telling a servant woman to nonchalantly dust off the damaged rampart with her kerchief. Then, when the English rolled up with a siege structure called a sow, which allowed them to easily climb over the castle walls, she cleverly ordered her remaining guards to roll one of the larger boulders that had been thrown at them back over the wall, demolishing the sow in the process. So, if the rest of medieval Scotland's ruling women were at all similar to Agnes Randolph, then Eleanor's portrayal in Brave may have some historical validity. Most people don't realize the original Peter Pan story was partially inspired by the author's brother, who died when he was just a child. You no doubt remember that one of Peter Pan's most iconic characteristics is that he never ages, and this incredible power originated with author James Matthew Barrie's traumatizing childhood and obsession with youth. It's believed his obsession started in 1867 when James was 6 years old. His brother David was killed just 2 days before turning 14. While the two brothers and some of their friends were skating on a frozen pond, one of the skaters crashed into David, violently knocking him to the ground and causing him to crack his head on the ice. David was their mother's favorite out of her 8 living children, and the small comfort she found while mourning him is that in her memories and heart, he would stay an innocent young boy forever. This traumatizing experience and the way his mother coped with it had a serious impact on young James Barrie's psyche, and went on to influence the creation of his most famous character, Peter Pan, the boy who would never grow up. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker are some of the most evil villains in any Disney movie, but I'm happy to say they are properly punished in the original story. For context, after the peach grows to its giant size in the movie, the money-hungry ants start selling tickets for the public to see it, but they refuse to allow James to join in on the fun. He doesn't get a single cent that they earn, nor is he even allowed to play with all the children who are visiting with their parents. To make it worse, he's forced to eat dirty old food while they treat themselves to some gourmet deliciousness with all the money they made. This follows the book exactly, until the peach is cut loose. In the movie, Sponge and Spiker try driving away from it, but their car is rolled over and smushed. In the book, the ants don't have the protection of their car, and so when the peach rolls over them, James and the bugs hear 2 distinct crunches, and the ants lay ironed out upon the grass as flat and thin and lifeless as a couple of paper dolls cut out of a picture book, which is a child-friendly way of saying they were dead as hell. For a studio that specializes in making content for children, Disney villains tend to be brutally and violently defeated, but they've still got nothing on the stories that inspired them. Starting with the grim Cinderella, her stepsisters are forced to chop off their toes and heels by their own mother so they can fit in the golden slipper. But that doesn't fool anyone, and on their way back from Cinderella's wedding, their eyes are torn out by birds. In Beaumont's Beauty and the Beast adaptation, Beauty's fairy godmother turns her sisters into stone statues and curses them to stand guard in front of Beauty's castle until they learn how to be happy for her, meaning they are fully conscious in their concrete prisons. Snow White's mother, the evil queen, is also punished when she attends her daughter's wedding by being forced to wear red-hot iron slippers and dance in front of the wedding guests until she died. Lastly is the cannibal who killed Tarzan's mother, Kala. Tarzan stalks him, stabs him, then hangs his corpse from the trees, which is eerily similar to the fate Clayton suffered in the movie, just with more stabby stabs. Everyone remembers that heartbreaking moment in Bambi where his mother is killed by a hunter and he's briefly left alone to fend for himself. Luckily for Bambi, his father appears to take him under his wing, or antlers, and raises him to be a responsible young buck. The Bambi from the original story isn't so lucky though. For starters, he doesn't just lose his mom, he loses a number of friends too. Apparently the hunters were having a field day and just shooting every animal they could catch in the crosshairs. Secondly, his father doesn't come to his rescue either. Instead, a doe who's unrelated to him takes over custody, while his father remains a distant, mysterious figure. It's not until Bambi gets older that his father gets involved and starts teaching him strategies for how to survive the wrath of the hunters, who are portrayed as almighty gods with the power to take life in an instant. He shows him how to get around using abandoned, overgrown trails that humans can't access, and how making his home in a ditch helped him to hide from other animals in the forest who might accidentally give away his position. Safe to say the book is a lot more realistic and brutal than the Disney version, but if you want to learn more about it, hit the link in my bio. And we're back. I hope you enjoyed those and learned some things. Remember to comment which short was your favorite down below, and stay tuned for a full-length episode coming next Thursday. Until then, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.